Hey folks, it's Nate, and it's time I got back to the drawing board, and today I wanted to continue my promotion of my most recent project, Hexwood Dust and Ashes, by going back and looking at one of my more successful video series, which is a book club on this book, Manga in Theory and Practice by Hirohiko Araki. Now, if you're interested in my comic project, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it today, but there is an Indiegogo link down in the description below where you can see some example pages and read a little bit about the story, get an overview of that, and really that should tell you everything you need to know about the project and whether you want to back it. For now, I want to talk about how what I read in this book influenced me as I was working on it. Now, this book is sort of not really a how-to, but a book of theory, a book of ideas and concepts to keep in mind as you work on a comic project. Most of it is about storytelling and writing, specifically in the medium of manga, shonen manga, which is what Araki typically writes. So I think there are lots of other places where you can get those lessons, and maybe that part of the book will not be of use to you if you've already read a lot about writing, if you've studied writing, especially if you've taken um, writing workshops or writing courses. You may not find some of that to be terribly useful, but there are things in there that are particularly aimed at comic storytellers that I think is really useful. And in fact, as someone who has written pretty much nonstop since I went away to college, and so that's almost 20 years now, by the time I read this book, I thought I had heard in some format just about every piece of advice a writer can get. Generic advice, not specific advice about a particular story, how you might rearrange it to work better. But general advice, I thought I'd pretty much heard it all. And there was one lesson in here that I took away that I thought was very useful. And that lesson was the hero always rises. And I don't intend to completely go back and recap either of the concepts I'm talking about here, but to give you a thumbnail, what Araki was talking about is the importance of keeping your hero on an upward trajectory from the beginning of the story. Your audience wants to feel some form of advancement. They want to feel like they're going somewhere. So don't double back or start your hero high, knock him down, and then build him back up to the starting point. That gets kind of boring to the audience. And once I heard Araki articulate it, I realized that I had often felt that way while watching TV shows. And the specific example he gives is of a superhero who has a set of powers, and then he loses his powers halfway through the story, and then at the end of the story, he gets them back. And that feels kind of static. And he says the better way to tell that story is to start with the person who had powers without his powers, and allow him to build up to the point where he regains his powers, and tell the process of losing them in a series of flashbacks, so that you have a series of progression of building. Even if the building comes actually from looking in flashbacks and learning more about what this character is capable of, or if your audience already knew what this character was capable of, if you're writing a well-established hero like a JoJo or Superman or something like that, start with them without their powers and use the flashbacks to kind of build up the villain and show how JoJo or Superman or whoever got into this situation, and raise the stakes that way. And that creates a feeling of momentum. So rather than starting with the status quo, removing the status quo, and going back to the status quo, which feels kind of weak, you can start out of the status quo and then build back to it. And that will give the audience a better sense of progression, of forward motion. And that was the idea that there had to be some sense of progress, some sense of forward motion, was something I took away from this. And it did slightly influence my writing during Hexwood. There were moments I realized I was taking something away only to give it back later, and I rewrote those. So hopefully they are stronger and you will enjoy them more. The second thing I took away from this was when he talks about what he refers to as a focus on the character's emotions or the character's reactions. And taken too far, this can turn into what is sometimes referred to as the reaction panel, where you just see somebody's face looking astonished. And those are kind of a meme in a lot of manga. If you haven't read a lot of manga, I understand. You may not know what I'm talking about, but as I've gone back and I've looked more at the Western comics I own and I've read, I've noticed that there aren't, very rarely is there anything remotely like that where the art takes a moment to just show you, not give a character dialogue to express it, but show you on the face or in the posture or something like that how a character is feeling emotionally to something that's just happened. Now, I think part of that is because American comics, the way they're formatted, with 22, 24 pages a month, sometimes as little as 18, I think. Um, the author tends to feel like there's not a lot of space for that kind of image, and so they try and make up for it in dialogue. And I suppose that's more a part of the medium, something you have to work around than a shortcoming of the authors. But as I've compared that to the people who do really well, the manga artists who do really well with their reaction shots, especially really not so much Araki, although he does use them to good effect at times. Um, People like Naoki Urasawa do a great job with this. Um, Give the most prominent example, there are moments where he will just take a whole panel, and maybe that panel will even be a large part of a page, to show the emotional impact of moments in a story on his characters, whether they are shocked or stricken with grief, or overwhelmed with relief to see a friend again. He takes the time and really shows you uh, in a panel on screen, so to speak, just that person having that emotional moment. And that really, I think, helps people build a connection with characters better than just a piece of dialogue, because it gives you those visual cues. And I tried to build that in the Hexwood. I tried to add more of those kinds of moments when they were appropriate. And I don't know how often those are going to work. I'm not clearly as good an artist as either Araki or Urasawa. So we'll see. I guess that will be up to the reader to decide how well those play. And those were the two big lessons that I took away as I was scripting and thumbnailing Hexwood, Dust and Ashes. And I'm sure as I continue to go back and look at this book, because I have browsed certain parts of it for a refresher, and I think sometime in the near future I'm going to go back, I'm going to reread it cover to cover. And I'm sure doing that will continue to give me insights into the process. And I hope that I will continue to be able to bring you new nuggets as I continue to try and apply them. And hopefully, of the hundreds of people who have watched my Manga in Theory and Practice videos, some of you have also read this book and will also have thoughts on what you took away from it and what you thought of it as you tried to apply it. If you do, by all means, put them in the comments below, because I know I would love to hear them. Hopefully other people who are interested in this topic and this book will enjoy hearing them. And hopefully we can kind of pool the intelligence there and come out better artists for it. Anyway, if you have comments about that, if you have comments about something else, if you just want to rag on my pronunciation, which seems to be the most common sort of comments on these videos, you can put that down in the comment box below. There's a like button and a subscribe button down there too, and there is a link to the Hexwood, Dust and Ashes campaign. I would really appreciate it if you check that out. I will talk to you all later.